When Gogh and Cezanne painted this light, we came to ride right through it.
Hi everyone and welcome to Provence.
For about a week, we followed quiet roads in search of lavender, riding between olive groves and old stone shelters, through teeny villages and proud, ancient cities. There was the fragrance of broom along the road, the sound of a fountain in a silent square, and a cuisine built on olive oil, delicious vegetables, and wine, of course. We began in Avignon, climbed up to Gordes, turned north under Mont Ventoux, reached Orange, and then closed the circle, right back where we started.
You'll find the GPX track of every route in the description of this video, ready to download and to follow. Provence is a land made for the open air, so come with me and let's ride into the painting. Our first day in the saddle is an easy one.
We roll out of Avignon's gate and head east into the flat green plain of the Sorgue river. Our first stop is the quiet village of Chateauneuf-de-Gadagne, nestled on a hill and the cradle of a movement to defend the Provençal language. Then we reached Les Tours, a small town on the banks of the Sorgue.
And then the Sorgue leads us to the prize of the day.
L'Île sur la Sorgue. They call it the Venice of Provence, and you see why at once. The whole town is built on water, crossed by canals. A gentle, beautiful place to close our first day. On our second day in the saddle, we climb to where the Sorgue is born, Fontaine-de-Vaucluse, the most powerful spring in all of France. Its clear green water gathers at the foot of a giant cliff in a pool so deep that no one has ever reached the bottom.
And here, back in the 14th century, an Italian poet found his peace.
Petrarch lived in this valley and wrote hundreds of long poems to a woman named Laura. Then we ride through Lagnes with a ruined castle and Cabarrière d'Avignon with beautiful stone buildings.
We stop at the village de Bories.
A whole little village of round stone huts, built without a single drop of cement, where shepherds and farmers once lived and worked. It was lovely to spend the night here, surrounded by old stone walls and houses. This is the day of lavender. We leave the stone villages behind and roll down a steep towards Gordes, one of the most beautiful villages in France, spilling down its rocky hill, crowned by an old castle looking out over the whole valley. And then, around the bend, it appears, the Abbaye of Senanque, a monastery from the year 1148, with a field of lavender blooming right in front of its grey stone walls. It is one of the most famous sites in all of Provence.
Monks still live here as they have for centuries.
And with their own hands they grow this very lavender. From here the road climbs again to then descend along a gorge that splits Les Sauts de Senanque, where we passed many vintage Citroëns in the opposite direction.
And our reward at the end is Venasque.
A so beautiful village guarded by three heavy old towers they call the Saracen Towers. Inside, hidden among the lanes, sits one of the oldest churches in the whole country, more than 1400 years old.
Today is a shorter, gentle ride.
We drop down from our rock at Venasque with the giant of Provence, Mont Ventoux, watching us the whole way.
Soon we reach Carpentras, once the capital of Pope's land.
It still wears that past proudly, an old Roman arch, medieval streets, beautiful buildings and the Passage Boyer. Then we ride on to Aubignon, a small town where the vineyards begin. A first taste of the wine country waiting for us tomorrow.
Today we ride into wine country.
All day long, one shape follows us, the Dentelles de Montmirail, a ridge of thin, jagged limestone. At its feet lies a string of small villages.
And almost every one of them is a famous wine.
Our first is Boum de Venise, small village nestled against the hill with narrow streets and hills of impressive charm. Then the road winds deeper into the hills past Tigny-la-Fare to Gigondas, a medieval village and the main gateway to the Dentelles de Montmirail.
Then we reach Sablé, a maze of round-shaped streets.
And then we climb on to Seguret, one of the most beautiful villages in the country, built entirely of old stone and pressed tight against the rock. From there the names just keep coming one after another: Roy, Rasteau, Cairanne, every hillside with its own wine.
Today was the longest ride, 40 kilometers, and now we will take some rest in Cairanne.
On our 6th day in the saddle, we leave the hills behind and follow the river Egg, down into a wide open plain covered from edge to edge with vines.
Halfway, we stop in Camaret-sur-Aigle, a village built in a perfect circle.
We enter under the clock gate crowned by a delicate iron campanile and cross its quiet streets.
And at the end of the plain, Orange, once a Roman city.
An arch 2000 years old still greets us at the gates of the city, and its ancient theatre is the best preserved in Europe, the only one whose immense stage wall still stands. On our last day, we leave Orange for Avignon.
And so the circle closes right where it opened, back in Avignon.
For years, this was the city of the popes, and you can still feel it in the monumental palace of the popes,
In the Bergen Bridge that reaches only halfway across the Rhone.
and in the ancient walls that keep even the minstrel winds outside. From the gardens of the Rocher des Doms, the wall valley opens at your feet.
But the loveliest surprises here are the small ones.
We wander past Mouret, a hat shop unchanged since 1860, and a few streets on, the Angladon Museum guards the only Dingo in all Provence, with a Cezanne hanging right beside it. We began this journey saying this too painted the light of Provence. We rode through it for a week, and here, at the end, we finally stand before their canvases.
Clearly, Provence is much more than the landscapes shown on this bike tour. Let's discover some more together.
East on our route, the land rises into a high limestone plateau.
This is the country of Sault, the capital of Lavender.
True lavender needs altitude, at least 600 meters. The plateau itself is a painter's palette: blue sky, golden wheat, green oaks, purple rose of lavender, an impressionist painting come to life. Sault sits on a rocky spur above the valley, with its medieval lanes and a Romanesque church. Half an hour by bike, the teeny village of Aurel clings to its slope. Tiled roofs, stone walls, and almost no one around.
A village loved by painters.
Then we drive down into the Luberon, and the colors change. Roussillon is a village painted with its own earth. For over 2 centuries, ochre was dug from the cliffs right below the houses, and every wall in town glows with it. Yellow, orange, red, all illuminated by the Provençal sun. And ochre is not just a color.
It is a pigment the one painters have used since prehistory.
A 15-minute drive away and ochre becomes a wall landscape.
They call it the Colorado of Provence.
Old quarries around the village of Rustrel were a century of digging, and then wind and rain carved canyons and cliffs. Rustrel is a quiet village with a beautiful castle on its hilltop.
Going east, we visited the Venasque plateau, where lavender appears in waves.
Here the fields roll toward the mountains, broken only by stone cabanons, long trees and the pale lines of dusty roads. The village of Valensole is a tangle of little streets leading to the church at its summit. The landscape feels almost unreal, purple, gold and blue. If Sault is intimate and high, Valensole is vast.
A sea of lavender made for wonder.
Near the quiet chapelle Notre-Dame de Santé, another wonderful corner to visit. On our last day, we drive east to where Provence meets the Alps. Here the Var river cuts between the mountains, and above it stands Entrevaux, a village that seems frozen in time. Its alleys are so narrow that the sun barely reaches them. Then we climb the zigzag path to the citadel, high on its rock.
For centuries, this was the border of France.
On the other side of the river began the county of Nice, so the king's engineer, Vauban, turned the village into a fortress, a dramatic, silent place.
The perfect final image of our Provence. What I bring home from Provence is all in the senses.
The color of lavender, the smell of the countryside, the mistral wind at my back. This is the France I fall in love with every single time.
See you on the next adventure and subscribe to my travel channel.